We're worldwide. That's right. You know, I don't know if we are. Oh, right over there. Straight. Right there, but I don't know if we're.
You can take your top button or you pump casual.
Disrespectful. We didn't know, trying to disrespect the tourists.
She's doing
Sure.
I
I didn't think of that. I like that. Pretty fun.
All right, let's call today's joint meeting of the Parks Board and Harbor Commission, newly formed Parks Board and the Harbor Commission. I'd like to thank everybody for taking the time on this lousy day outside. I know there's nothing else we'd all rather be doing. So we appreciate your time and your sacrifice. This meeting kind of came about by Rachel's effort to get communication going between what benefits both of us might be to discuss. I appreciate one of the councilmen, John Cups, being here with that. And Victor, do we need a roll call?
Yes.
Do you want to do that? Want me to do it?
I'll do it. I'll do the Harbor Commission first.
All right.
Jim Bartlett.
Here.
Karen Stroh. Here. Jeff James.
Just here.
Chip Peppers.
Here.
Tom Brand Jr.
Here.
Laura Coors. Here. Bill McCullough.
Here.
Bill Brown.
Here.
Craig Fisher.
Here.
And John Baker. Here. Parks Board, Dan Mulder. Here. Scott Reese.
Here.
Allison Larson.
Here.
John Cups.
Here.
And Susan Clark.
Here.
Looks like we have a full board.
Great, thank you. It's interesting, these two boards are the only ones in the city, almost only ones in the city that have advisory capability to city council on that. Nobody at this table sets policy. It all goes to council for review on that. Yet they look to us for input on our areas of expertise and experience. And that's because we have shared interest in the waterfront land, which is really what I think Rachel's purpose was to get us together on this. It was thought that we had to spend a little time talking about it. Now, we do have a time constraint because we have a Harbor Commission meeting at 4 o'clock. So we're going to try and end this by 3:45 if we could do that. So if you have good ideas, get them out ahead of time. Don't have them at 3:40 if you want to discuss them before we go. Are there any public comments from the floor? Now, Daryl, you've never been this quiet in your life. Are you looking around? We'll run this as a relatively loose meeting. If you have something you want to say, stick your hand up and I'll try and recognize you. We're all about input today, and that would all be appreciated. First item for discussion is the something that's near and dear to all of us, and that's the Marina Park. And I'd like to start out by saying, from my perspective, what the Parks Board did in its entity before it is now, with the umbrellas and the picnic tables and the games, and providing a little direction down there. From my perspective, a guy who was there every day for around in the park was a big step forward. So whoever came up with that, again, from my perspective, good work was there. So I think we're all interested to know, what our feelings are with that property going forward. And from the Harbor Commission's perspective, and chime in if I'm off base with this, our goal has not been to tell the city what to do with that piece of property, but to weigh in on what ideas might come out of that and make sure that they're compatible with the boat use that is the primary purpose of that bulkhead and waterfront area. So we've worked for quite a while on a building that turned out to be too expensive, so that has kind of been shelved. We've talked a little bit about maybe some type of a shed type roof area that provides some shade space and gathering space down there that might be an option. Maybe public bathrooms in there, which would allow us to change the way the current Marina Park building works. But I think we ought to open up the table and get some feedback from the Parks Board to see what you guys have been thinking about and see if we can generate some discussion on that.
So I can speak on behalf of the Parks Board. You guys can chime in as necessary. So we discussed it. We discussed it a little last summer. I came to Harbor Commission, and the discussion was to change the public restrooms into laundry facilities and then build a restroom building on the Marina Park side. That is still the plan as of right now. With the skate park fundraising and the boardwalk, it's fallen a little lower on the list to do. So we're looking at a few years at least out potentially. I think it's also important that we keep the space as it is it works well for everybody right now with the games and having concerts. I would like to have some more landscape architects come in and give us some more options of what we can do with the space, landscaping wise, and make sure when we do put in, if we put in another restroom building, that it's not taking away from any of the park space or the view. I think that's really important to the citizens of the community and the voters alike. So that's kind of where we're at right now. We're not looking at any large scale plans unless we were to do something with parking or anything like that. If we were to go for a grant, which obviously we would speak to the Harbor Commission about fully once we came to that.
I'd like to add to that, if I may. Yes, I think one of the most important things that we feel we need to address with Marina Park is keeping it flexible, because who knows what's going to happen there. You know, the big tents go up, concerts have been happening in all different areas of the park. I guess that's one concern we've had about putting another structure in the park. And I don't know how this discussion could get started, but could there be like an addition off the current harbor master building so that we don't have to take up any of the park land for something like that? Sorry.
So my question is, if you are thinking about it in a separate bathroom, would it be to the west or to the north?
That's why I'd like to get more drawings. It's been discussed both. It's been discussed going closer to the pier side. But with plumbing and how the sewer lines are, it's also been discussed closer to the harbor master. And that's where I think it opens us up to a more large scale, getting more landscape design and engineering designs that make it actually more feasible. I think we only have one drawing right now for it.
That I'm aware of.
Yeah.
I don't think we've seen that at this table. Drawing you're talking about?
It's from years ago, that it definitely has been, you've all seen it before.
Thanks, Lucas. Yeah, Bill.
Is it the intention to have the restrooms year-round facilities or just seasonal facilities?
It most likely stay year round. Some marina restrooms as of right now are year round. I think that's helpful for winter events that do happen in the city, but that could be discussed as well.
I kind of think too much discussion on this is a little premature, because I know there's a couple other fundraising opportunities probably ahead of this or whatever it means, but maybe in the near future, the next step would be to put together a plan. You know, what would it look like? What do we think it should be? How much, you know, what's the footprint? You know, how does the Harbor Commission feel about the use of that footprint? But a lot of detailed discussion right now, it seems a little premature to me.
I think the goal today would be to get feedback from people. How do you feel about it? I mean,
when you guys spent all the time and money with the drawings, you know, the concepts, you know, a few years back, what was the plan on, did you ever talk about going up on top of what's there?
No.
And putting like office space above it and then redoing the lower level with, you know, bathrooms and laundry?
That's interesting.
That wasn't considered, primarily because it conflicts with the harbor, which wants to allow for as much view from Bay Street and Main Street and the bluff. So we're not looking through or around buildings, we're able to look over them and on top of that. And that's why the building looks the way it does when it was first constructed with that low hip roof, was to try and
Right.
live.
Well, just understand what kind of size constraint and everything like that. I just wonder if that was ever discussed rather than putting another structure in the park. I just wondered if you guys ever thought about going up, so like Mike's office space could be up where he could actually see over top of, oversee everything versus that, plus it keeps everything kind of in one spot.
Well, we did discuss it as we looked at all the plans, but it was dismissed for several reasons. And one was the vista and the height and the sight from the street. So it wasn't, we had thought about it, but it didn't last on our table very long.
Okay.
I wonder if we could take a two-pronged approach though and just keep the two alternatives open. One being to add on to the harbor master building and then the other to build a structure in the park rather than just blazing ahead with a structure in the park.
I don't think anybody's interested in blazing ahead. I'm just trying to figure out what our options are.
Yes.
And I don't know that I would be so concerned with fundraising about this now. It's more important to come up with some plan that is generally agreeable from there. Yes, Greg.
My experience has been with fundraising, you got to have a vision, and so if it's a two-story building or a one-story building or whatever, I mean, a two-story building, certainly, the lighthouse is 3 stories or 4 stories. It could be iconic that you see when you come around the harbor, and that might not be in a lot of people's block of vision, and it might be very pleasing. So I think many things should be discovered, but at some point you have to have a vision and show people, and that's how you're gonna raise money.
Yeah, I agree, and that's kind of my point, is this isn't even near fundraising or applying for grants for, but I'm just looking for the idea to basically, I don't want the word going out in town that we're putting a huge pavilion in that park or something. Like, I just wanted to be clear that we're still going what we spoke about last season, or potentially adding a restroom, and then having your blessing to look at other plans as well for the park that fit that.
I think that maintaining the smallest possible visual obstacle there is very important. And I think that if you were to put up a 3-story iconic tower there, you'd hear from a lot of people. You might be surprised. We've had some fairly vehement opinions on things of that nature here over the years. Have we abandoned the idea of replacing the building with one to the west of the drive? Like where the electrical boxes are, and just maybe making it a little bigger than the current building and returning the stuff on the other side to parkland? Have we walked away from that concept, or?
I don't know, Bill. What we do know is that the building that we worked on to come up with the design for, which represented the square footage that we all felt was necessary, became, the state changed their funding venue, so it became more expensive than what the city could embark on to do.
Yeah, at that point in time.
Yeah.
I think that the way that plan, from a footprint and a traffic flow and visual, was excellent. And if we have to pay for it ourselves, so be it. It was very unfortunate for those of you who weren't around. We had a grant like queued up and everything was ready to go, ready to rock. We're going to build this thing. And then the political winds changed and money started moving around the state, and they started putting strings attached that weren't anticipated. Like, if they give us the money and then we don't do whatever they say, they take the marina away from us. And I think we underestimate how cool it is that we have total control over that. Maybe not total, but we've got significant control over that space. And to not have the state be dictating architectural standards, all that sort of thing, I think is an advantage that you don't notice till it's gone.
Well, and that's the advantage doing the grant through the parks, because there'd be strings attached, but they'd be related to the parks and nothing to do with the marina.
Okay.
So that'll be an advantage, the parks master plan being completed. So it'd be a different fund.
If I could add, I don't think the park would be nearly as functional if we split it up and took a third of the current park for the building and then added parkland to the east of, like where the building is right now. I think it's much more functional if you've got all of the park space.
Hence the suggestion that we examine some almost see-through structure, so to speak, located in the northwest corner over there that already has trees and bushes, a sewage lift station, and a couple of electric transformers that you could take many of the visual obstructions and hide them, so to speak, in one deal. And that also is a relatively inexpensive way to provide shade and protection in public restrooms. It might be something that we could fund ourselves.
Yeah, I guess our discussion on that was, is that the right corner to put it in? That's kind of the gateway into the park from the city. So you're walking in and then you have this building, regardless of whether a lot of it's glass, kind of blocks that whole entryway.
Actually, it would be right next to the Chamber of Commerce.
We're already blocking it with the
It's
gazebo.
always being blocked.
The gazebos, yeah.
Lucas, what's the sewer situation at that site? Is that easily attached?
The western portion would be the hardest to attach. It's
The western
farthest-
portion.
Farthest away. Well, you'd have to, it's not the farthest away. You would rip up a portion of the parking lot to get to sewer. in that area.
I think if, correct me if I'm wrong, Lucas, but wouldn't we be doing that in any place that park space? If some type of structure went in there?
If we kept the existing location and did an addition or something like that, no, you have, the facilities are already there, so.
But anywhere in that green space, if you had another building, you would be doing some excavating to add utilities.
Yeah.
This whole thing started, I think, years ago, talking about the laundry facilities and all that. Mike Johnson, remind me about how many boaters say where the laundry facilities, we're looking for laundry facilities, we need laundry facilities.
Probably a dozen or so a year,
So pretty minimal.
but if we had them, it'd be something we could advertise and probably get more use out of for sure.
Just trying to figure out if that's something that needs to be focused on, or if just while you're building, you might as well put them in there type of.
I think part of that too was we were talking about a lounge area for voters to check in and just hang out on rainy days, so that was another part of the problem, or the equation, so.
I think that can be a little difficult though, if residents and taxpayers are saying, okay, well, this helps the voters that are visiting from other areas, but how does it really help those of us that live in the city?
I don't know where the money's coming from. It's coming from the waterfront fund. That's voter, that's a revenue.
Traditionally, the revenues from the boaters have funded all of the infrastructure down there. The docks were paid for by out of the boaters' revenue. The park, the 2-hour, all of those things are paid for by the boating community, not the taxpayers in the town.
Yeah.
Including the lawn mowing all the way from Soul Street, clear over to the beach, the lifeguards, plus an administrative fee that goes back to the city for that. So there's quite a bit of revenue that comes from the waterfront that and reduces the taxpayers' obligations and keeps their millage lower than it would be if it wasn't there. So we've always tried to run the marina as a, because it is a business that should be contributing back to the taxpayers, but we have to make sure that business has the tools it needs to be attractive to the customers. And when we first lost the laundry on the hill, 15 years ago, whenever that happened, something like that, we did hear a lot more than 12 comments a year because people were used to the laundry, even though they had to figure out how to get out there. There was considerable traffic going back and forth to that. So much so that both owners on that thing provided a shuttle service to and laundry pickup service down at the dock. Now that has gone away, not because the need has, but because people know we don't have laundry. So that's why I think Michael doesn't get many requests. And if we were to put the service in, as we see at other marinas around the state, it gets used. And it gets used by boaters. So I don't think it's fair to judge that on just what we're hearing today. You have to put it in perspective. Yes, Sharon.
Maybe, I understand your point, but the typical stay, I think, down at Marina, Mike just said, is 3 to 4 days. And so the economic impact to town, the restaurants and the shops, is something that's a huge positive for the taxpayers and shop owners, restaurant owners.
That's a good point too.
Local people may be able to use facilities as well. They don't have a laundromat. But Judy, the question comes to mind, it sounds like a lot of this discussion is still unsettled as to whether or not we're looking at down the road, and this is, I think, early to talk about, but are we looking at one building that we can add on to? Or are we looking at just keeping that building and then adding a pavilion? And those are two different things in my mind. I don't know if we need any input at this point, or if that's something that could come out of the future survey that we're going to be doing for, the harbor over the summer. But it sounds like we're talking two different things here. So which way do we want it to be as a community? Do we want the two buildings, or do we want to have one building that'll satisfy all the needs we're talking about right now?
Well, let's discuss the one building approach with a vertical component, as you guys have been talking about a little bit. John, I think you mentioned offices upstairs, or Dana, somebody did. I did Michael's job for 10 years, and I wouldn't want to go up and down those stairs 200 times a day.
I just had my knee replaced. I don't know how to.
Oh, you can do it now.
We don't know about you too high anyway.
That's another thing, you have to have an elevator, most to do that.
Yeah, you probably would.
Yeah, it was a telescope at the
Yeah, that's right.
Well, how many square feet are needed for a laundry? I don't know.
About what the 2 public bathrooms are behind the building that exists. That's the interesting thing about it. And, you know, in the big picture, worrying about where the utilities are coming from is a concern, but it certainly shouldn't be a driver to our decision-making. Whatever we decide to do ought to be put where it ought to be, and then we can get the utilities to it. It's all doable. It's just whether you're digging 20 feet or you're digging 100 feet. So
Do you plan on doing surveys for do you plan on putting out a survey for the harbor commission plan this spring or
yes,
summer?
there's actually will be a couple of them at least.
Okay, perfect. So we have some for the parks plan. They're specific to the parks. There's nothing on there about harbor master plan for obvious reasons. So it'd be nice when those surveys are completed and we're working, then just to have plans to come together, and that will lead us probably to what we want to look for. Really, all I was looking for today is to say that we're not going to use those plans that were made 3-4 years ago.
7, 8 years
Yeah,
ago, something like that.
that's not the route we're going to take.
Well, the last building plan that we had probably finished up 3 years ago, and then it ran through the process after that. As Bill said, if we had $1.50 in the bank, or we could get that from grant money, I think the consensus at the table would be to probably move forward with that plan.
If we could
Although we
get the
have some
PDA to pay for the lawnmower.
The passport grant through Parks and Recreation, you can apply for 3 a year in April, and they do allow for engineering and landscape design plans. So that would be something in the spring you could look at if we wanted to apply for a grant to get designs for what we wanted.
If I think my understanding or my interpretation of what's been going on at our table for a long time is we came up with a plan that we thought satisfied a lot, and we had surveys and reviews, and it was a good plan. And then they pulled their money.
Right.
And when that money went, we looked at what we can make per year. And we watched our accounts dwindle because we were paying for other things as well. So we, not only were we didn't have a big savings account, we were losing money yearly, not because of using it, but we were paying for other things.
Mm-hmm.
And so it became obvious that we weren't going to build our building for 10 to 20 years if we just kept on the trail we were. So we took a look so what are our other options? And our other option is to meet the need and the vision of what the Harbor Commission wanted for a building. If we could separate out the restrooms, take that out of our budget, take it off of our table, we could afford to change our building. If funds came somewhere else and built this building for us, we could take a look at our old building again.
Where are the
That's
plans? Where are the plans?
I don't know, somewhere in the,
Do you have them down here?
Victor's got them someplace.
They're on a computer or server system. But
is that a good summary?
Yeah, I think you're on the money with that. And I also think that at the table, if something like that were to happen, you know, some waterfront funds could go to build a
Yes, right.
second, in a partnership with the second, a building over on that thing, because it helps us out.
Right, that's kind of.
But the scale was such that the perceived economics made it doable in-house rather than going after an 80% grant, which got pulled from us by the state of Michigan.
Right, and Lucas and I have discussed also, you know, if we're gonna do it, and we're gonna do it with the restrooms and the parking lot, it's best to tear up the park once than to do the park and then say, oh, now we wanna fix the park or do something with the parking, the harbor master building, so you know, we'd like to do it one sweep. So sound over projects going on for a year.
One of the other assets of that plan we came up with did have a parking component,
I did, yeah.
which involves some rearrangement down there, which I thought actually was very well done by the 2 women who put that together for us. And again, it was perceived we would do that at one time because there was going to have to be work done everywhere on it.
Yeah, I do have that component.
Because a part of our concern with that building is not only the lack of service that went there, but the way that the traffic, both pedestrian, bicycle, and car, comes down Spring Street and makes turns into the park because the streets don't line up, the sidewalks don't line up, there are no places to walk when you come in through that walkway, the street entrance into the Harbor Master Building. And we see people, and Michael, I know you see this all the time, I do, but there's bikers going one way or another. We don't have storage for that kind of stuff. There's no sidewalks for pedestrians. It's a cluster when you're driving around down there. So that parking plan actually maintained about the same number of parking spaces, but improved the sidewalk layout, the parking, the line of sight stuff, made it safer for turns. The chief reviewed it. He was very happy with it. So all of that kind of fit together into that, and it still would with leaving the harbor master building where it is and doing something else on part of that park. And I think from my own perspective, doing some type of separate shed type building takes up much less footprint than what the new building would have done down in there. And I think keeps the sight lines even better because you don't have the bigger one in the middle.
I agree with that.
So that's kind of why we ended up where we ended up. And again, we're not beholden to that. Yeah, it's.
Well, I think because of where we're at with time.
Yep.
We can table this. We know where you're at now. If we can have the plans for our meeting next week, that way we can at least review what you guys have already done. And then we can have a little better idea of what you guys have already looked at. And we can kind of talk about it amongst ourselves and then get an idea, and then we can start plugging forward with
If
it.
you'd like someone from the commission to show up with that to help explain it, I'd be happy to do it, or somebody else wants to
I
jump
think
in.
we can meet, what, Tuesday? Yeah, maybe that'd be great. But at least we'll have the plan in front of us and then we'll know what we're really talking about.
6 p.m.
6.
If one of you
Who's
could,
doing dinner? You guys are meeting at 6 o'clock.
you want maybe before or after?
Well, I know where you're gonna be before, and I got a pretty idea where you're gonna be after.
I guess one other thing to consider from, even if you're gonna do the parking lot thing, is the electrical primary that runs under that parking lot is 60 years old. It's got open fusing and faults. Sewer main is probably closer to 90 years old. Storm sewer is gonna be 50 plus. So there's a lot of things that you don't wanna throw a $300,000 parking lot over the top of. And in the architecture design that you guys had, they eliminated the lift station for parking spots, both transformer enclosures, the backup generator for the sewer lift station. All that was eliminated, so that plan really doesn't work.
In that part of the plan.
Right. I don't know how it would affect, maybe a traffic engineer would look at it, but adding a fourth entrance, which also eliminated another transformer on the east end of town. I think 4 entrances to one parking lot would actually be less safe than maybe doing something. No, maybe it had something to do back in the day. If you look the way that the parking lot's designed, there is, and the entrance into the parking lot on both ends, State Street lines up, Spring Street doesn't, and I don't know if that had something to do with, you can drive a fire truck right out, straight to the bulkhead, be out there. If you shift, then you have to go in and try to weasel around cars. I don't know, but it's just a thought.
I think years ago when they wanted to get out on the pier, that would have been the case.
That's what I mean.
Where the building's at now, not so much. But it's back when the bigger ships and everything used to roll into the main marina. They wanted that access point.
That's good feedback, Lucas, on that.
And redoing that would also be a massive, something that both water and electric, I mean, we'd have to plan for years to have enough money to upgrade that.
If it's 90 years old, you gotta start planning.
Hey, Jim, when you talk about funding, are you talking about external funding like the theater? Or is this all?
I
state
don't
type
know what
funding?
the parks guys were talking about.
I mean, wasn't I don't know what percentage of the theater was private or all, half?
It was all donated.
Yeah.
Private.
That's not what we're talking about here.
Not at the Harbor Commission table, no. We were looking at grant money from the state or some other avenue, our own resources on it, along with, from the waterfront fund, along with maybe a contribution from the general fund.
And I think that's the same thing from park side, between DNR grants and some different grant writing.
We never looked at private funding for either one.
No. Doesn't mean it's not an option, but that was never really considered. Okay, so is that enough chatter about the Marina Park on that? Great. Next up is item B, Ford Park and boat launch. And
So, the parks, we have a project matrix, and it basically goes through each park and it has our goals, how it aligns with our master plan goals, and then they're rated by priority. And some of those are waterfront parks, obviously. So I just want to go through real quick, just the waterfront parks, just so you know what our goals are, and you can say whatever your goals are. Yeah, so waterfront geese control, obviously we all know that's an issue. We're gonna be working really hard on that down at the beach and Marina Park. I plan on using the sweeper a lot more this season, trying to get around the tables, get down there. We're also gonna allow dogs on Zorn Beach in the early morning and later in the evening to try and control it, just as a trial. If it doesn't work, if you get complaints.
I think that's a great idea. I watched it work in Charleston, South Carolina.
Yeah, they will, it's something the geese can't get used to. I mean, if you go down this little street, there are no geese. I mean, you know, so we'll try it out. And then go on down there. Down. Ford Park, we did the restroom remodel at Ford Park. That's completed. If you haven't been in there, they are open for the season. We have kayak storage on there, but it's very clear that that would just be a recommend. If someone came to me and said, I want more kayak storage at the parks, I would say you have to go to the Harbor Commission in regards to that, or I would come to you if we had complaints.
We've looked at some ways to
Yeah,
accommodate a lot more boats in basically the
Right.
same space.
but there's nothing in our master plan in regards to that. And then benches, I'd like to put a couple more benches down there for the ferry. I don't believe there are any benches in that area where people wait for the ferry at Ford Park. And then site dewatering, which Lucas has kind of mentioned that the water table is really high for a couple years, so that may not end up being a permanent issue down there. It's not right now. And go on down. Marina Park lawn rehabilitation. We have Dan's Green Side Up coming back this spring and potentially in the fall to do some work on the grass. And then a long-term landscaping plan, which we've already discussed in this meeting. Soul Street, we're gonna work on some dog control. I plan on going down there a little bit more this year and just watching how busy it is during peak hours. Potentially putting in a public restroom that's far away. As you can see, it's only rated 3 on the priority list. And again, kayak storage, just in case you ever have comments.
One question, Rachel.
Yeah.
Kayak storage is in both Soul Street and Ford Park. Does that mean you'd like to have more kayak storage or less kayak storage?
Those are the
or-
comments I've had, but again, I always tell them to go to the Harbor Commission or speak to Mike. I usually give them Mike's email.
The answer is more storage.
Yeah, it's usually
Both
more
places,
storage.
yeah.
Because I think it's important that
I know.
the Parks Board understands that as a municipality, Harbor Springs provides 100% more kayak storage than any other
Right.
public marina in the state of Michigan. We are way ahead of the curve on that. So just keep that in the back of your head when you're thinking about this.
Yeah, I basically just tell them we don't deal with kayak storage, and I send them and I say, you know, how much do you add? It's like boats, how much do you add? So, and then Zorn City Beach, we're gonna reinstall the playground down there, but it's gonna be on the grass side of the beach, not in the sand. And then restroom remodel was completed, it's the same remodel as Ford Park. And then we may look at other shade options, planting some more trees, maybe tables with umbrellas, things like that. And I believe that's all of them. So if you had any comments on any of those goals, that doesn't mean they're happening this year, but those are short-term goals for those parks.
Lucas, by dewatering, what are you thinking down at Ford Park?
That we'd never win that. That wasn't
No,
my
you're not.
idea. I wasn't-
That's why I'm asking. I don't see that one coming.
No.
No.
So, yeah.
Oh, and then for Ford Park, we had, it was the Watershed Council? The Watershed Council came and they looked at spots to put in rain gardens. And our plan is to put one where it's cleared here at the stadium. And the other spot that they potentially recommended was Ford Park for a rain garden. So I just wanted,
What does that entail?
well, not really any clearing because Ford Park's already clear.
They'd remove the sod, probably 12 to 18 inches of soil. Make it someplace where water could run into a pool before it discharged anywhere with plants that can live underwater or dry out. I believe the original idea, they had on the west side of the park, which I shot down it because Irish entrance coming out and the kayak launch, there's not room to do it there. They did have an interesting idea with like a trench drain across the boat ramp. So when the boats pull out and drain, it actually brings it over to be filtered by the rain garden as opposed to just running back.
So they want to filter the lake water.
Well, no, from inside the boats with from the hull, the oil, things like that. It's not going straight back in. It would then be naturally filtered. So my idea at that point would then,
Across the ramp.
instead of putting that 10 by 12 foot wide rain garden on the west side by Irish and the kayaks, there's that little triangular, weird shaped piece where the ferry launch is.
Right.
Maybe try to put something there and then we can discharge into the riprap and it would be minimally noticeable.
I think one thing that's a little problematic about these rain gardens is who's gonna maintain them.
Yes.
Garden Club, Marina Park Board is maintaining Marina Park Gardens again this year because Garden Club is just maxed out. They can't do anything else. And I've just seen it at schools and the community that we came from where, you know, it seems like such a good idea, environmental idea on the surface, but then it ends up looking terrible and, you know, it gets ripped out, 5 years later. So that would be my only concern about going ahead with that.
They can be difficult to establish and then if you don't maintain them, they look like a Walmart parking lot.
Well, you talk 10 or 12 feet in from the riprap, there's picnic tables in that space right now.
Right.
But you go farther west.
Right.
So, and I hate to give up that.
I think, Rachel, this was something that Denny got started back when he was here, so I don't know, maybe this is something we want to talk about again at Parks Board.
And we originally were working for one, and that was over here where the runoff from the stadium parking lot and different things. They came up with the second one.
So maybe it's better just to do it as a trial at that one spot where it has less of an impact.
And we're not spending any money for this, so they have grants for rain gardens, so they're just suggesting locations. We don't have to.
But they won't maintain them, right?
I don't think the grant money covers maintenance, but I think it covers installation. But I do agree with the roof is essentially, the one by the Ottawa Stadium is no problem. Fort Park's no problem.
One of the things that the Harbor Commission has on its lawn, maybe coming up sooner, is a redesign of the traffic flow and all that within Ford Park. Because things have changed in terms of the way that people use the park. We've learned things. It's not optimal in a number of ways, as various people can attest to. So let's make sure we coordinate before we start putting in infrastructure.
I think to be clear, it was, we were going to discuss if something like that might be possible. We don't have a plan to redo that.
Correct.
There have been some comments made, maybe there's better ways to look at it. Maybe somebody in this room has made a comment like that before. I'm trying to remember who.
Yeah, we usually do, we'll talk about it for 15 years first, and then hopefully make a good decision.
Just above the process. That's how it works. Rachel, was there anything else with Zoll and Zorn Street beaches you want to talk about? Kind of bring us up to speed on that stuff.
I will be cleaning the Ford and beach restrooms until the lifeguards begin or the marina staff begin. So I'll be there in the morning and later in the afternoon. So if you are down there and you notice something, please email myself or obviously my.
I haven't seen them yet, but the job at Fort Park that you did, Michael says is excellent.
Yeah, it looks
It's
really,
awesome.
it looks really nice.
So much better than it was.
That's good, that's good for you.
Is there a place for ferry people to hang out if the weather's bad in that building?
There's a little hallway before you get to the foyer, before you get to the restroom.
I know there's space, but it wasn't all that friendly last time.
Well, that space is, it's been used for storage, so figuring out what we're gonna do with that building has been empty for essentially a couple of decades now, just storage space, is something we've been trying to figure out.
And it's scary.
That's why I've only been in there the one time.
They're much nicer now, but the storage space is still a little rough.
Is the ferry going to be up and running? It kept damaged.
It's funny, they Yeah, they repaired the damage from last year. I believe it's May 20.
Memorial Day. I haven't heard from them.
Memorial Day.
Yeah, I saw a post on Facebook.
Victor, have we heard that from them, like officially?
I have.
I haven't heard a word.
I have heard from them that they're planning on starting, and I saw on Facebook that May 30th.
Billy told me he saw it on
But then
Facebook.
Chip
so
Evers, Chip, you know.
So it's true.
Solid, solid.
I'm not officially on the board anymore,
Okay,
but I did talk to Chris, the guy, yesterday, and they're hoping, they're planning on Memorial Day. Boat's fixed.
And there was some talk about a different boat last fall.
No, not for Harbor Springs.
And that didn't happen.
They are bringing up a larger boat based in Petoskey for cruises to nowhere.
Okay.
So what do we take?
They got a few up on
They're free.
Does anybody else have any comments that might be appropriate going either way on this stuff? This was a good meeting. So, and your parts meeting is next Tuesday at 6 o'clock here, right? If anybody else wants to show up, I'll see if I can make that. We'll take a look at those plans and go from there.
Okay, that'd be great.
Any other comments from anybody on any of the boards?
No, it's good, thank you.
Anything from the? Lucas, I'm glad you were here. Thanks.
I had one thought I had to note. There's been a lot of conversation about our different parks and very little about tourist park. Any consideration for better utilization of tourist park?
Before I came, there is a capital improvement to put in an observation deck.
And like a bathroom?
I don't believe that's on there, but yeah, that's definitely been discussed and there are some small upgrades on our project matrix.
It's been a few years. Jeff and I served on a different capacity some years ago when we actually initiated that the toilet to be cleaned more than once a week. I don't know if that's still in effect or not, but if you haven't used them, they're not the most pleasant places to go.
I will look into that.
And you might want to do that on your own. Just go there and check it out, right? Then you get a firsthand feel for how nice the public is dealing with.
But hearing no further comment, I'd like to say thank you to everybody for coming, taking your time. We do have a meeting at 4 o'clock. So let's adjourn this meeting.